Alright, so our next interview guest is going to be Rito-chan, and I'm just trying to figure out what he's working on, or what they're working on. This week's update. Okay, he.
Update for what we accomplished this week. So, this week, a lot of learning, a lot of doing. Start off with one small win we had, which is we recreated some branding for our first podcast series, the Yesteryear Chronicles. So you can see the branding in Figma here. We went ahead and updated the branding for all the episodes we've released. As of today, we've released 20 episodes that were approximately 10 minutes each. So we're pretty dang proud of that. We've gotten lots of feedback from listeners that the quality of the episodes is very good. Though this was kind of like our version 1 podcast, and we think, it's limited in how much reach it could have. We noticed, it's not so good that people are telling their friends about it. So that's a learning, that even though people say it's good and they like it, they're not flooding to subscribe or to listen or share it with their friends. So, as was always the plan, we've been underway with creating another podcast series. We were able to finish an episode. I'll let you hear what that sounds like.
Let's get started with our first listener question from Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and my boyfriend Tom has this issue with his oral hygiene.
So we created a podcast episode that is Grimes giving relationship advice. Well, obviously AI Grimes giving relationship advice. And so there's 5 different call-in speakers here who asked their questions, which we sourced from Reddit and we heavily modified. We wrote the script with some use of AI, though we found that actually that was pretty difficult. So, I pretty much hand wrote the entire script because the AI does a terrible Grimes impression. But we shared this new podcast with some people to see what their impressions were, and they were very impressed by the quality of audio that we were able to get. And that took a lot of playing around with things. These are just some of the audio files that were created in making this podcast, right? So it took a long time, but it's a labor of love. And the gambit here is we've got a roughly 10-minute long podcast that's high quality, that we've reached out to Fiverr to get a good professional podcast thumbnail and some professionally edited YouTube and short clips and TikTok clips so that we can launch it hopefully tomorrow, and hopefully see if we can, with the quality of the audio, get more listeners, more audience, more attention, to just prove out the concept that people are interested in AI generated content and that we could create it.
So, essentially, it's a AI generated podcast. And let's see if they did launch it. 1 hour ago. Okay, here's the launch.
Also possible that he's seeking some sort of connection or excitement that he's not getting in real life. Either way, you should tell him the situation. It's better to be honest and upfront than to quietly drive yourself mad over it. Unfortunately, or I guess fortunately for some people, these technologies are just going to get better and better and better and better until they are indistinguishable from real people. So I think all of us in the next 5 years, we are all going to have to set boundaries and guidelines for what appropriate relationships with these new intelligences looks like. The future is a very weird place, but your relationship doesn't have to be. Talk to your boyfriend, set some boundaries, work on your trust issues, and try not to sneak into his phone.
So, I see you've already gotten some user feedback, which said this is amazing. How are you generating it? Is it custom or using some app? But this is probably the most controversial use of AI that I've reviewed so far, because you're taking somebody's voice, you're basically impersonating them, and I'm not sure if the situation is real. I'm not sure if anything is real in this podcast, um, but it sounds real, and it's kind of ironic that you include this section, but where it says technology is going to get better and better and better in the next 5 years. We are all going to have to set boundaries and guidelines for what appropriate relationships with these new intelligences are or look like. So this in itself is kind of like, I'm starting to get this negative connotation of AI for people not in the tech world, and it's kind of like, oh, AI is going to displace our jobs, it's going to ruin a lot of things, it's going to, enable a lot of malicious acts, right? Like if you can mimic someone's voice, what's stopping you from like getting their bank info and like getting into their account? Some of those accounts are voice detected. So if you use a voice that's certified by the machine learning program to generate a fake voice that sounds exactly the same, will that same program or model be able to differentiate the two? But that's besides the point, right? So this is just your production of a podcast. I know Grimes has given all creators the use of her voice for songs. I'm not sure if that's. I'm not sure if she's allowed it for stuff like this podcast. Um, so I would just double check on that front of like the legalities of this. There's very little regulation right now, which is probably better for you. Otherwise, this might be illegal. Um, but yeah, that's my initial thoughts. The podcast itself, I'm not really interested in the topic of relationship advice. If I wanted to, I would just go to Reddit and like scroll through the subreddit relationship advice or any of the other, drama subreddits. Um, but, I could see this like going viral, especially if, you start doing Reddit posts with, you know, um, or you start doing a podcast of Reddit posts where famous people are reading them. Like, am I the asshole with, I don't know, Steve Harvey or something? Or technology with Steve Jobs, right? So, yeah, I don't know where it goes from here, and um, I'm very interested to learn more about, how you guys came up with this idea and kind of where it started.